Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Thought Leadership Podcast and the Speak Your Legacy series, where we get to meet the most incredible, mission-driven thought leaders, conscious leaders who are here to create a real impact with their work. And today, I'm so grateful and happy to welcome Nadia Boersch to our episode. Thank you for coming on the show, Nadia.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so delighted, Daria. Thank you.
Oh, pleasure. So we are going to talk about a topic that I probably never had on the show and actually never spoke about. And I myself am really excited about this topic. And the topic is emotional intelligence, leadership, and horse-assisted coaching. So horses helping us to become more emotionally intelligent, more strong in our female leadership and more in alignment. So there's so many things I can ask, but my question is, how did you start with this?
So during my corporate career, people kept asking me, how did you become so confident in presenting? How did you become so confident in this? How did you do that? How do you tap into your intuition? So I kept getting these questions and my answer was always, well, actually, I learned it from the horses. And so in between two jobs, I did an education as a horse-assisted coach. And it was just like, well, I probably won't ever use it, but let's do it anyway. I was really curious and very interested. And so when I then started my entrepreneurial journey, I actually started off doing something completely different. So I started with marketing consulting because that was my background. And then when I did more and more of the marketing consulting, people asked me, how did you build your business? And then I started business coaching. And then at some point in the business journey, it came up the blocks, all kinds of blocks in sales, the energetics, the leadership, all these things, and especially with women. So I started taking them out to the horses and they had like transformations and immediate results. So I was like, holy cow, this is like really working. And so I started doing it more and more, and through word of mouth, more and more people started to come. And that's how I started doing that. And then really tapping more into the energetic side of it, the emotional intelligence side of it, and the leadership side of it.
Amazing.
So that's how it developed.
And what it is, why horses and not another animal? What's so special about that connection between horses and humans?
So what is very special about horses is they can read our energy fields. So they can read the energetic levels from, anything from love, fear, confidence, like all of the energy levels that we have, we can measure them on frequencies, and the horses can read all of them. And what, in my personal opinion, because we use dogs as well for leadership training and emotional intelligence, but I feel the tricky thing with dogs is they're very much attached to humans. They're very much domesticated. So sometimes they would do something out of a will to please or out of some other kind of behavior, whereas the horses won't do that. Horses are very much instinctually driven. So they have what I call a bullshit detector. They will always portray and mirror exactly what is going on. And that's what makes them so powerful coaches, and why their intuition can guide us to experience our intuition and our emotional intelligence.
All right. So yeah, they have this capacity to feel where you are energetically in your frequency. And when do people usually come to you for this work? What happens in their life that allow them to say that this might be the path for me?
So one of the first ones is I usually have a lot of entrepreneurs, so business women coming to me when they have blocks around. The most typical one is when they have blocks around attracting clients. So where there's something like, yeah, I've been doing this work for 6 months. I've been putting myself out there. Nothing's happening. And there's some energetic block and they don't know what it is. So then we take the horses and we look for what is the energetic block? What do they need to shift within themselves in order to release this and to be an energetic match for their clients? So that's the number one. The number two is people wanting to learn to manifest. So tapping into the manifestation energy. And the third one is I also work with a lot of managers, so young female managers in particular. When they step into their first managerial role, they're often very much overwhelmed and that they don't know where to start and how do I become a leader and all of these things. And the fourth one is executive leaders, female leaders that are managing managers, where they need to become this empowered, highly emotionally intelligent leader. And sometimes they're struggling to catch up with that.
I can imagine how important that is, especially when you're in leadership position, in the amount of subconscious messaging we are sending out with our bodies, when just even before speaking, just even before entering the space, it's huge. And the more we are aware of that, the more we understand that actually most decisions are made based on that subconsciousness. Our business shifts. And do you see that often with your clients, that they are, even by getting interested in doing this type of work, that they're getting more conscious?
Yes, absolutely. So what happens is that typically I make people very much aware of, before we even enter the field, that first of all, the horses choose who they want to work with. So I have a herd of horses and I walk in with the people, and then the horses that feel they can contribute to this person, they show up. Wow. So, and the second thing is that the energy of that person is felt way before we enter the field. So this is something where a lot of people are not aware, and because the horses can demonstrate it to them, because we can only talk about it and you may have or not have experienced it, or you may be aware of it, but when the horses actually show it to them physically, it completely shifts their awareness and it completely up levels their consciousness to a whole new level, because they're like, wow, you know, like I have and I see this especially in the corporate world, where typically people are not as conscious and not so much aware of their energetics. And this is where I see it most, where people come and they're like, you know, their jaw drops because they cannot believe the things they experience. It's like opening up a whole new world for them.
Yeah. And I'm very curious, and I mean, I guess every session is different, but how does it usually look like when they come in and they work with the horses? Well, what is that? How does a session look like?
So yes, every session is completely different. I always say that the next pillar shows up whilst you're standing on the one before. So every way looks different. Every path, every journey is completely different. How it works is that first I challenge people on their leadership skills. So I tell them, okay, first we're going to test your leadership. So they start with, we work with the horses only on the ground. So we don't ride the horses. We only work from them on the ground. So the first exercise they need to do is they need to attract the horse, right? So they go on the field, they need to catch the horse. And sometimes the horses that want to work with this person, they will show up. But also if the lesson is meant to be, like I experience it a lot of times when we're working on client attraction, and then the lesson is, you know, no horse shows up, and they're like, oh my God, this is like in real life, you know, not even the horses show up for me.
Oh, wow.
So already before we enter the field, the session already starts, and all the lessons that are meant to show up already show up. And so we work first on energetically attracting the horse. And then once we have the horse, we start on the leadership. So I give them the horse and just they have a lead. And based on how they lead the horse and how the horse reacts, I can already tell them a lot within like 2 minutes. I can already tell them exactly what kind of leader they are, how they attract clients, how they don't attract clients, what their energetic field is. So I can already tell a lot very, very quickly. And then we decide together what is the actual topic that we're going to work on, because 80% of the cases people come with one topic, but the actual topic that needs to be worked on is something else, something deeper or something more. And so we work on that, and the horses show us the blocks. So they show us, like we would set up with some elements, like sometimes I use trees, sometimes I use all kinds of objects basically that we attach with an emotional meaning or some kind of situation. And then we send them in and we see what happens, and we go with the flow in order to first unblock whatever needs to be unblocked, and then work on getting people to a higher frequency and higher energetic level on this topic.
Amazing. So in between the sessions, you are doing more the let's say the deeper work together with them, and then you go back in. Is that how you usually do, or to see if it has been cleaned up, or does it happen within the session?
It happens all within a session. So
Wow.
Typically, I only need one session in order to clear a topic and to get them to a higher emotional state on whatever the topic is, higher energetic and emotional state. But what happens is people typically get a bit addicted to this. So it's like they're, okay, now I reached this energy level, but I want to reach this energy level, right? And so they come again in order to get an even higher level of what they desire. So we come from an issue based, and then we clear it, and then it becomes a desire of wanting more. And then we work on having more. The only exception is when I work with leaders, I work with them really on the long term, because we need to develop more skills. And I have like a list of emotional intelligence topics that we choose and we work on together. And so there it takes a longer time until they're really embodying all of these skills, or all of these attributes, if you will.
And when you say clearing with the horses, do you do the clearing, or does the clearing happen in relationship with the horse in the session?
So sometimes it depends on how deep the trauma is, or how deep the issue is. If it's really a deep-rooted trauma, like sometimes you will have things coming up like sexual abuse or emotional abuse. I often, for example, I had a case where somebody came and she had, her husband was a narcissist, and the horse that showed up was actually not one of my horses. And he kept bullying her through the entire session until I said, oh, this horse is a narcissist.
Oh, wow.
And she started crying. And now when you're dealing with a situation like this, you need to, I look at with the horses, how deep is the topic? Can we solve it now? Yes or no? Sometimes when it goes really, really deep, and it's a trauma that has been built over years and years and years, I would send them to more of a therapeutic kind of setting. And if it can be cleared in the moment, I will clear it in the session. But that always depends on the situation and how deep the trauma is.
I understand. And wow, that I can imagine that for you, every session is so different, and it brings so much gifts and values to all the leaders that you work with. And is there any story that you can share from all this experience that you have working with horses and leaders, where something surprising or something that really stayed with you in your memory that you remember for the rest of your life? Can you remember a moment in time when that was really something special?
So I have to say that I almost every session, I have a moment where even I'm still flabbergasted, and I'm like, did this just really happen? And in a workshop setting, I would be like, did everybody just see this? Like, did this just actually happen? Like, wow, you know? And if I were to pick one, I think one of the biggest ones for me happened by absolute coincidence. So I was training somebody to use my methodology on equine-assisted coaching. And so we had to find somebody to test on, you know, so it was a supervised session, and we had to find somebody to test on. And I asked my father if he wanted to come and join us, and if he wanted to be part of this experience. And my father is suffering from Alzheimer's. And so the three of us went into the session with two of my horses. And what happened in that session was, it completely blew my mind, because all of a sudden my father could keep his short-term memory, all of it. Like, he could give us all of the things that happened in that session. He could tell us with a clarity that he hadn't been like in months. He could all of a sudden say numbers again correctly. So he was confusing 200 with 2000 and 20,000. All of a sudden he had the numbers completely clear. And that for me was something where, you know, Alzheimer's, if you look at it from an energetic perspective, is very much about taking responsibility. And all of a sudden he was able to take responsibility again for certain things in his life that he hadn't been able to take responsibility anymore. And so it was just in 1 or 2 sessions, we changed so much. And it was never my intention to work with Alzheimer's. I never had this on my agenda, and I don't think I ever really will take that part on, but it just showed me how much power these animals have, and how deep this work goes. And of course, I was also extremely emotional because there is no cure for Alzheimer's. There's not much you can do about it. So for me, I was, I'm still lacking words sometimes when I speak about it. It was an amazing experience. And one of the other things that happened in that session was that we manifested something for my father. He was going through a very nasty divorce. And so we manifested in that session what that agreement with his, at the time, still wife was going to look like. And 2 weeks after that session, what he had manifested became reality in like word by word, like every single part of it became reality. And so for me, that session was something that was so magical and so special on so many levels. That, I'm still like very emotional and very ecstatic talking about it.
Oh, I can imagine. What a gift to experience this together with your father, and to see him manifest, and to see him remembering and being empowered, like you said, to take his responsibility. And wow, I see how passionate you are about this work, and how much it means for you, and how much it means for the women that you are supporting, and the leaders that you're supporting. And for the ones who are listening and watching, if there are some lessons we can take from the horses, what can we learn? I know it's very generalistic and everyone has their individual learnings and gifts to learn in this life, but are there some things we have in common that we can learn from the horses?
Yes. Oh my God. There are so many. But off the top of my head, some of the most important ones include, for example, alpha leadership. So in the horse herd, we have a hierarchy. And what I love to teach, especially very high level leaders, is that the alpha of the herd is not necessarily the one that is the bully, or the one that is, you know, the most annoying one, or the one that is the most fierce one. It is the one with the most resources, and the one with the highest emotional intelligence. And this is something, and it's always a female, by the way. And this is something that for the women is so empowering when they see this, like, it is not the one that is announced to be the CEO that is put in this position that has the most power. Oftentimes it is the people at -1 that have a lot more power, and that where you see, who do the people actually come to when they have an issue? Are these people? Who are the people that they trust? Who are the people that inspire and motivate them? Are oftentimes not the ones that are put in this position and that have, you know, an emotional intelligence that is not very developed. And so this is something that I really love. What we can learn from the horses is like working on the emotional intelligence, and working on empowering others, and working on, you know, all of these areas can propel you into a completely new consciousness and a completely new way of living and experiencing everyday life. And the other thing we can learn from the horses is that the energetics can be felt way before you enter the room. And the horses show us and demonstrate us in a very physical way. But we humans can also read this energy, but we read it on a subconscious level. So this is the powerful thing, is to be very aware of our energy before and when we enter a room, and how we deal with people. And to really bring that forward and work more with that. that every human can feel this. It's just that we unlearned some of the times to feel this, and we can still read it on a subconscious level.
Yes. So important lesson, such a beautiful gift to have this conversation with you, because indeed the emotional intelligence is everything. It's the base of our work, and our capacity to hold ourselves, capacity to hold others in their emotions is the choices that we make, the decisions we are based upon that. And the more we bring that into the forefront of our leadership, the more we can have a conscious leadership that we all are craving in these days. We are craving the humanness in leadership. We are craving the values and the integrity with what people are leading. And if we can see that in horses, that's already happening. The alpha horse, the alpha leaders are the ones with the highest emotional intelligence, and that you have the capacity to actually train yourself. That is also a key word that I want to add to Nadia's conversation, that you have the choice. It's not about how many certificates you will have that will lead you to work. It's not how many MBAs you will get, even if that could be helpful sometimes. But what actually matters the most in our time and age in leadership, and even maybe always, but we haven't really seen that in the forefront, is emotional intelligence, is your capacity to hold your energy, and energy more than spiritual, your energetic capacity to be aware of what you're setting out in the world. I mean, Nadia, those lessons are for everybody, for the ones listening and watching. Is there any final advice you want to give for the ones who are here with us today in listening and watching this episode, so they can start taking a direction towards this?
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the main things is believing in yourself. Believing in yourself is one of the most, especially as women, I think this is the most common, let's say, disease of female leaders, is the capacity to believe in themselves and to truly believe in themselves from an empowered place, and to then be able to project the energetics behind it, to then be able to embody the energy. And this is something that is so powerful. If you can learn to just believe that it's possible for you, to believe that it will happen, to believe that anything you want, all the doors are always open, then the energy finds its way to magically align with you. And this is something you can practice with or without horses. And the second thing is to be very conscious and very playful with the energy, in terms of like, oh, let's see, like, how can I enter a room differently this time? Or how can I, can I imagine of expanding my energy to a place where it's felt by everybody that I walk into a room? It's one of the things that I always say is, I want to create women with my horses that when they enter a room, and before they enter a room, people are like, oh my God, who is that woman? That's what I want to create. People with an energy that they're like, wow, who is that? Where people are like whispering, like, do you know who that is? That's what I want to create. And if you can practice this and have a bit of fun with that, like every time you walk into a restaurant, you walk in as a different person and you're like, okay, today I'm going to be, I don't know, the drama queen, and tomorrow I'm going to be this. And how can I make my energy bigger and see the reaction of people? I think that's such a beautiful starting point, and something you can also have a bit of fun with.
Ah, love it. Love it. Go out and play, go out and believe, all of you. Enjoy this playfulness that comes with just what if, and what can I do to explore my energy and explore my belief in myself and what I'm capable of creating in this world. Yes, yes, yes. So Nadia, where can people find you to go deeper into your work?
So generally on social media, you can find me. I share a lot of the work and a lot of the stories. I've started something called the Horse Coaching Files, where I share like these unbelievable stories.
Yes.
That's where I share those. And people have been really like, wow, I can't believe what the horses are doing with you. And then I have a website as well, so nadiaboersch.com. And I have some things coming up. So I work Europe-wide. And at the end of the year, I look forward to going into the US as well, to offer some workshops in terms of playing with the energetics with the horses. And I have 2 retreats coming up in Portugal. So one in May and one in October. So if you're interested in really deepening that work, then feel free to reach out.
Wonderful. We'll share all the description in the description below. You'll find all the links about Nadia, so you can go deeper into her work. Make sure to comment below and share with us what you're taking away from this episode, what you are taking with you, and don't hesitate to reach out to Nadia and connect with her as well and go deeper on this work. Thank you, Nadia, so much for being on the show with me today, and it has been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Daria, for having me. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for having those conversations. I think it is now, we spoke about this before, right? It is now the time. It is such an important topic to speak about emotional intelligence and leadership. Now is a time, and especially for women.
Yes, yes. Thank you for your work, Nadia. Thank you for your gifts and your service to all our leaders out there. And for everyone who are here with us today, thank you for showing up, because it starts with that. It starts with you showing up in this episode, and tuning in and being present for this conversation. I really invite you to take a moment after today and just get yourself a tea or a coffee, just sit and journal, meditate, just think, what do you anchor? What do you integrate? What do you want to explore deeper? So you actually use this as a tool for your leadership development, not just an inspiration, but an actual actionable tool right now, right here. So thank you, Nadia. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon for another episode of the Speak Your Legacy series.